I wanted to just end with just some general like Bitcoin over the next 12 months. I mean, you mentioned that Mara is one of the largest holders of Bitcoin itself. So I have to think you guys are at least partially positive on the future direction of the price. What do you think about? What do you think about the 12 months? Because I mentioned FASB, mentioned ETFs. There's a macro backdrop that one could argue is supportive of asset prices if the Fed does cut rates. What are you looking at over the next 12 months with just Bitcoin's price?
So I think you got a number of really good tailwinds. You've got obviously FASB, you have the ETF. You have the halving, which granted it's more of a psychological shock than anything else. As a supply shock, you're talking about going from 900 Bitcoin a day to 450 Bitcoin a day. There are millions of Bitcoin traded a day. So that supply change isn't going to really do a whole lot, but it's the psychology of it.
Hmm.
But there are only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. We've mined almost 20 million. The amount of Bitcoin actually in circulation today, liquid on exchanges, is somewhere between 1.8 million to 3 million, depending on the day. And what's going on with the ETFs, that liquidity will increase likely. But realize a lot of these ETFs, once the Bitcoin goes in there, if somebody's buying shares and somebody is selling shares of the ETF, that Bitcoin doesn't have to circulate anywhere on the blockchain. It's just going to stay in the ETF, like in a corporate wallet at an exchange. And so, there will still be very tight supply. So between all of those tailwinds, there will be demand increase and price will go up. And as you start getting sovereigns who want to hold more Bitcoin, we talked about they want to mine Bitcoin so that they can get their transactions processed. But, listen, there are only about 1 million Bitcoin left to be mined between now and 2140. So no sovereign is going to build up a whole wealth fund by mining their own Bitcoin. They only want to mine Bitcoin as a way to transact and be able to transact Bitcoin and process transactions. They are going to have to go in the open market and buy Bitcoin. So I think as you add up all these things, there's reasonable logic that supports an argument where by the end of this year, we should hopefully, and this is my personal opinion, it's not Marathon's official opinion, and this is not financial advice. My personal opinion is that I think we will exceed the prior all-time high by the end of this year. There'll be a sell-off, profit taking, and then you'll see by the end of next year, we'll exceed that all-time high by potentially 2x. And after that, who knows what's going to happen? Bitcoin may repeat its traditional cycles and go into a bear market, or we may be done with bear markets and it's really a macro environment where it's all about global liquidity. To your point, global liquidity will increase this year. I don't think we're going to see inflation fully tamed this year. I don't see the Fed doing max maybe 3 rate cuts. You're not going to see recession across the broad economy. You'll see pockets of recession. The PMI is down, for example, but consumers are still spending. You're seeing housing coming back now as interest rates are, real interest rates are dropping. So I think the economy is going to be a mishmash of signals, but global liquidity will increase. China's about to do a trillion yuan liquidity injection. You're going to see Europe cut rates faster because their economy is in much worse shape than the US's economy is. And you're going to continue to see disinflationary areas of the economy, energy sector, for example. But you also have geopolitical risk, right? You got all the craziness going on in the Middle East. You've got stuff still going on in Ukraine and Russia. And you have the risk for China, Taiwan. So all of that means that the US fiscal spending is going to have to increase. There's nobody putting look at what Washington, the Senate just approved today, a spending bill that the House will likely approve. That is 1.6 trillion. I think it's a stopgap measure. The fiscal spending in the US is out of control. And when you've got $33 trillion of national debt that, oh, by the way, in Bill Clinton's day, he was the last president to have a surplus in the budget. The national debt in Bill Clinton's day was $5 trillion. Right? It's $33 trillion today. Right?
So
the
crazy.
General Accounting Office estimated at the end of Bill Clinton's term that if that budget surplus continued, the national debt would be paid off in 15 years. Yet today it's ballooned to $33 trillion. Right? There's only one thing the US can do to control that debt, and that is either stop spending, which doesn't get anybody elected, or do something that lowers the value of the dollar, that lowers the cost of servicing that debt. And
Which
what
is
does that bode well for? That bodes well for Bitcoin.